Alex here with a video on the Masterson support letters. Talking about Danny Masterson. He recently was convicted of raping, I think it was two victims. And those were like a 2 decade old crime apparently, and 30 years. So he got the maximum. That's the nutshell of what happened. Some people are surprised because he's a famous person, actor, assumably a rich person, and he still ended up getting the maximum penalty. Other people are not surprised. I really don't know because I didn't watch the case. The point of this video is to talk about the support letters because I see these letters come up. Well, I'll talk about support letters and I'll talk about in person testimony. And I'm talking about sentencing. So after somebody's convicted, they end up getting sentenced usually like a couple months later. My understanding is they need a lot of time for felonies because they get like, at least in Nevada, they get reports from what do they call them? PSI reports, pre-sentence investigation reports from the Department of Parole and Probation. And I'm not sure if it's different in other states or how that works, but I've just noticed that for every felony that I've seen, they always need like a month or two. Then they get this report. They consider the report. They consider victim impact testimony. They consider allocution, which is the convicted person's typically some kind of apology, but not always. And then letters. So sometimes people want to support the defendant who was convicted and they don't want to go to court in person, so they just send in letters. I'm going to talk about all this stuff. I'm just going to be honest, even though the truth is not always really nice and flowery and happy. But the letters that people send in my opinion, have almost no impact at all. Like none. Sometimes they can anger a judge. They don't say it. They just kind of go, oh, okay. Maximum. And in this situation, it kind of surprised me that Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis sent in these letters because they ran this really important nonprofit that was supposed to like go after people who were trafficking, whether child or not. They were trafficking people around the world, and they were supposed to go after those. I mean, that's what their organization does, but they sent in these letters to support Masterson despite the conviction and despite their role at that organization. And I'm kind of thinking that perhaps they didn't get any like advice when they did this, because if they did get advice, whoever gave them advice, hopefully a lawyer or PR person, especially a lawyer, they would have probably told them, you guys are taking on a lot of risk for like no reward. I mean, I heard he got a lot of letters. I heard he got like 28, 29, 30 letters of support, and it didn't matter. He still got the maximum, which is just a testament to what I just said, which is that the letters have almost no impact at all. People can go into court and say it, in front of the judge in person, and those have almost no impact too. Uh, I've also seen even the other way around. I've seen like plea deals and stuff, plea bargains, and then the victim and the victim's family will speak, and they'll be upset, and it rarely does anything to stop the plea bargain from going through. Sometimes it does seem to me like it does result in a more severe sentence. It's not. I would say I can't give a percentage. I definitely wouldn't say half the time. It's still not often that I'll see. Sometimes somebody will go in, especially the victim, um, or media coverage, but it's not like a huge sway to the judge. It's just sometimes I'll notice something. I'll be like, okay, well that might have been because of that statement or that media, but it's not like outrageous. It's like a nudge. The only thing that I think really makes a difference is the case itself. So like not the people that are sending in letters and talking after, but the actual trial itself. Sometimes something during that trial happens that's really remarkable and makes the judge not want to impose such a severe sentence. And then sometimes the victim will say that they forgive the defendant. So sometimes the victim will go to court, they might send a letter, or they might go in person and say to the judge, hey, yeah, they did this horrible thing to me, but I forgive them, and these are the reasons why, and you shouldn't be harsh on them. If that happens, that seems to have a really big impact too. But aside from those narrow exceptions, it seems to me like it's mainly just an opportunity for people to vent, and it just doesn't have any impact on the case, or the sentence. And this is one of those examples. He got dozens of letters, and he got the maximum sentence. It didn't matter. And so Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis went out on a limb for no reason. And if they would have gotten some advice, they probably would have not done this. I mean, I would assume they wouldn't do this because of how, I mean, when you're going to take such a big risk, you at least expect there to be some chance of having an impact. And it's odd to me that they did that. This video is still, I think, useful for a lot of you because now you know the truth about all that stuff. I think a lot of it is because of how the appeals work on sentencing. So I've seen a lot of appellate dispositions come down, and gosh, there's really only two things that they'll consider. Well, two things and a weird thing. I'll talk about all three. So the first thing is the Eighth Amendment, which protects against cruel and unusual punishment. I see that one a lot. And it never works. Typically, the Supreme Court says if the statute is not cruel and unusual, then whatever the judge orders that's within the boundaries of the statute is allowed. So, you know, the statute that controls how a crime will be punished is an abstract thing that's not connected to the facts of the case. If they think that that is unreasonable, they'll deal with that. But if not, and as long as the judge is within the boundaries of that statute, they'll uphold it, even if it just seems so unfair. People will try and like compare it to all these other people that got convicted of the same thing, got lesser sentences. Supreme Court doesn't care about that. They'll just say the statute is constitutional, does not violate the Eighth Amendment, and the judge's sentence is within the boundaries of the statute. So yeah, I have seen some reverse where the judge accidentally went outside the boundaries of the statute, but that's kind of a no-brainer. You know, the statute says between this and this amount of time, and they did too much time. Obviously, that's going to reverse. It's not even within the boundaries of the statute. The other thing that I've seen is, well, I guess I could talk about the weird thing really quickly. I've seen at least twice where somebody does not want probation, and the judge tries to force them into probation, and the Supreme Court's like, nah, you can't do that. If they don't want probation, you got to send them to prison. So I've seen that overturn. Oh yeah, okay, so the second thing I kind of skipped over was sometimes the judge will make a remark that makes it seem like they're basing their sentence. This is going to sound messed up too. It makes it seem like they're basing their sentence off of some kind of passion. And if they do that, they'll overturn it and send it back. But you know, I think what that makes judges do is just not say anything. They just impose a sentence without saying anything. Because there's nothing in that case law that says that a judge can't be passionate or inflamed or outraged when they impose their sentence. It just says that they can't state it on the record. So there's probably a lot of situations where the big sort of basis behind a sentence is just the judge's personal opinion, and they just don't say it. You know, they don't put it on the record, they don't put it in the order, they just keep it to themselves and just impose a sentence. And as long as it's not in the record, it's fine, it's allowed. If it's not in the record, it's within the boundaries of the statute, and the statute itself is not a violation of the Eighth Amendment, sentencing is going to be upheld. So I think it's because of that, like, there is just very little that anyone can do to get a sentence overturned. And for that reason, it seems to me like the letters that people send in, the letters of support and the victim's impact and all that stuff just doesn't have as much of an impact as people would think. I do think, like I said, guys, it's probably a really good sort of way for all of these other people to vent. But in my opinion, just based on my observations, it seems to have very little impact on the actual sentence itself. So, yeah, I don't know. They probably did get advice, because if they did get advice, they probably would have been warned not to do what they did. And they did it anyway. I don't know what else to tell you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.